Deaf people of Reddit, what is the equivalent of having a song stuck in your head? Deaf person here, it's honestly pretty similar. Rhythms, tapping your foot, etc. Not sure about other people's experiences, but I usually have a static sort of sound replaying in my head. I was born deaf and later got a cochlear implant, so I can hear relatively well, for a deaf person. I listen to a lot of different music but have noticed that it's usually the simple choruses that get stuck in my head, and I have terrible audio memorization, so it's usually 1 to 2 lines at most on loop. I'm late to this, but I'd like to offer an in-between perspective. Profound hearing impairment. Can't hear the upper 1/2 or so of normal human range. The lower half is pretty quiet compared to the average human. Despite this, I'm very into music. I play guitar. I produce hip-hop, pop, electronic, and I DJ for fun. Anyway, the nature of my hearing impairment, like many, make it extremely hard to understand speech. Because of this, I will frequently have a song stuck in my head, but because I never know the lyrics to song unless I look them up and study them extensively, I pretty much just glaze over the lyrics and sing the tune, melody with the random gibberish it sounds like to me instead. Come to think of it, this is funny because I just realized as much as I love hip-hop, I frequently sleep on great artist songs because whether or not I like a song depends entirely on if their flow, voice is catchy, regardless of their bars, because it's just another instrument to me. I really envy people who can pick up lyrics no problem. Always kind of sucks when I'm at a party and someone looks at me while singing the lyrics and I kind of just shrug instead of locking in with them. I'm mute after a surgery didn't go to plan. I hear my voice in my head, but sometimes I have different accents, haha. I wonder how it feels to read without knowing how the words sound or saying them in your head or even thinking. This is a brilliant question. My sister always got the equivalent of sign language tongue twisters stuck in her head. She would be idly doing something and signing twisters. Guys, I have a question. Whose voice do you hear when you're talking to yourself in your head? If you play piano or guitar, you can sort of make out what sounds are like through vibration. Actual deaf guy here. Well, I was deaf since mid-2015, so I wasn't born deaf. And I used to have a cochlear implant, but sadly it doesn't work anymore since it's getting old and now it's in my cabinet. I would have some YouTube videos, TV shows, movies, cartoons I seen repeatedly play over my dead, and maybe some music I hear. Like I said, I used to have a cochlear implant until it died permanently last month, and I would have some jazz music playing on my head and some memories I have also appeared on my head, but it usually depends on the day though. Remembering my old memories tbh. Sometimes I hate growing up. I mean, remember stuff from the past is depressing, especially seeing old commercials that aired during late 2000s and early to mid 2010s. I read this as dead people. Spelling makes a huge difference in the answering get. I've been deaf since I was 2. I always get clips of people dancing stuck in my head, like the Carlton dance from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or dancing in the fountain from the Friends theme song. Soft kitty, warm kitty, little ball of fur. Happy kitty, sleepy kitty, pure pure pure. When you play Tetris like one day and then spend weeks seeing Tetris bricks falling everywhere 24/7, ha ha ha. Not deaf by the way, but Tetris thing is as sticky as any good song, or more. Following for scientific data that follows. Deaf since birth. I would think any images go through with transition effects. Random rhythms that I just made up in the head. All the good questions get ignored on this subreddit. I'm born deaf, and ever since a friend said a phrase to me, it's always just pops in my head at random intervals. Asterisk, I've got change in my pockets. And it goes jing-a-ling-a-ling. Asterisk. Beethoven can be charted by his symphonies. As he lost his hearing, more low notes became prevalent in his music. Those can be heard not only through the ear but through the body itself. I'm not deaf, but I think they can still feel the vibrations of a subwoofer. Maybe that has a similar effect. I was sitting in a car for 6 hours once and the bump of the ride got stuck in my head. I asked my completely deaf best friend this and she said, the rhythm of the bass in my car, or pictures of things I enjoy. Especially shows I watched as a kid. I can remember probably every scene. After a few more texts, I added the songs she talked about to my playlist so I could turn them on while in my car together. I never really thought of the bass in things until now. For any deaf and hard of hearing music fans, I recommend Australian band Altar Boy, who have 2 deaf and 2 hard of hearing band members and perform in Australian Sign Language. Deaf teen here and I get random dances stuck in my head. Like out of the blue I'll just feel the need to sew the Macarena. Or I'll get rhythms stuck in my head and tap my foot a certain number of times, etc. My friends think it's funny. Deaf people must sleep really good. I'm deaf and I often get drum beats and rhythms and other percussion instrument beats stuck in my head through vibrations. My daughter is deaf. Mainly for her it's the bass. We always have our stereo listening device against a wall, vibrations. If I hear a song I think she'll like, try and keep up with the trends for her, mainly I'll play it for her. Often, if she catches a tune she likes, especially if it's popular so heard it repetitively, she says to me, "What are the words?" Then she Googles the lyrics and learns the song. Partly because she actually loves music and also to fit with her peers. How can they respond to this if they can't see it? What's a song? I'm fascinated to see a couple of deaf people here say the repetitions that get stuck in their minds are movement, dance, moving hands, rhythms. How marvelous. I wonder if movement is an earlier form of communication than sound. I'm thinking of group dances, so many of which are called folk dances, which indicates they're really old, like myths. I can feel the music by putting my hand on the speakers, so yeah, I get the beat stuck in my head even if I DK what they're saying. People, and musicians especially, develop a skill over time called audiation, where they can recreate the sounds in their head. This is why Beethoven could still compose music when he became deaf toward the end of his life. He could still hear music because he had so much experience with it. A person who had not heard as much music as him would not have been nearly as successful at recreating the sounds of an orchestral in their head. So to extrapolate from that, the longer a deaf person had their hearing and the more music they listened to, the more successful they would be at recreating those sounds in their head. Deaf person here. I will have certain TV show intros or commercials repeatedly play over and over in my head. Mostly stuff that I used to see regularly, such as the "Pardon Our Dust" commercial Toonami aired when I was in middle school, high school, or the intro to Gargoyles, X-Files, Dragon Ball Z, just to give a few examples. I was born deaf, and I never heard a sound in my entire life. I may have watched some video clips such as intros, scenes from TV shows or movies, ads, or even films, so I played them repeatedly in my mind. My mom is deaf since the age of 3. When I talked to her about sounds, she said she feels the sounds, the vibrations with her body, if they're strong enough. The rest she imagines. Sometimes I observe her while she, with an occupied mind, like when during regular housework, sings some kind of tune that stuck in her mind which she undoubtedly imagined it would sound like. She gets the rhythm. I assume she imagines the rest, but the sounds that come out of her mouth sound unlike anything people with normal hearing produce during these moments. I would describe these sounds as sounds of feeling. I'm born deaf. I tend to get scenes from movies stuck in my head. I'm replaying that scene for some time until it goes away. Deafy here. It's basically a GIF on loop. Born deaf. Not a song, but phrases that get stuck in my head. Usually it happens when I wake up thinking of something. Sometimes it's during the day when it's just a word that repeats itself over and over. The other day, I had a rough day and the word, persevere, kept repeating itself for hours. I am severely hard of hearing since birth. I received a hearing aid at 4. So I am able to hear, but because of the level of hearing loss I am and always have been very visually oriented. I have never learnt sign language, so even though my primary language is Dutch, my primary language is in fact written Dutch. I could read before I could talk. I am able to hear music, but I dislike most music because it usually is noise to me, as I can't distinguish instruments nor make any sense of the lyrics. So, I am not in fact completely totally deaf as your question is aimed at, I guess, but I will answer for my perspective. I get bits of text stuck in my head, or a random word. Also sometimes visuals of things happening or people doing something. Those are short clips and it is like a repeating GIF. I like to tap patterns with my fingers on my arm, which then gets stuck in my head. I only lost most of my hearing, so with headphones I can still hear music. I wish I could answer this since I am deaf, but I have a cochlear implant, I can hear, so I still get songs stuck in my head. I also sometimes get words, phrases stuck in my head, but I think that probably happens to everyone. If a song is being played loud enough, then I will have the vibrations stuck in whatever part of my body felt the vibrations the most. Like, if someone's phone rings, it's really annoying because I will still feel it ringing hours later, and sometimes it's hard to tell if it's a different phone or phantom vibrations. I'm not deaf, but I sign, and have frequently gotten words stuck in my hand, i.e., I walk around absent-mindedly fingerspelling them over and over for the day. I asked my deaf uncle what his conscience consisted of, since he's never heard a spoken word. I wondered if it was just an image of his hands signing. I was right. I've been deaf all my life. I remember how my father used to play the violin when he was alive. I couldn't hear, but damn, I remember every expression of his body, and honestly this is the most accurate representation of music in my life. Born deaf. I like to watch people dance on TikTok. I get their movements and facial expressions stuck in my head. Before TikTok I would get movie scenes and cartoon stuff stuck in my head and GIFs. By the way, there was a time when my brain was rickrolling itself. It was super annoying when you can't stop thinking about the beginning of that Rick Astley video. I asked my deaf uncle the same question, but he just ignored me. Replaying that super awkward moment from the work meeting a week ago over and over again. I read that as dead people of Reddit. Nothing in 2020 surprises me anymore, so I came through to find out what songs annoy the dead while they just tryna be dead and shit. I'm losing my hearing and I don't get songs stuck in my head, but I do hear voices from ambient noise. I think it's just my brain trying to make sense of the lack of audio fidelity. Fun fact: deaf people love hip-hop and house music. It's because they can feel the rhythm better. Fully lost my hearing in my mid-20s. Mine is mainly songs with way wrong lyrics, thanks to gradual hearing loss, and bits and pieces from internet clips. As a semi-deaf person with tinnitus, I get ringing in my ears which often follows a pattern, and once I notice it, it's impossible to make it stop. It's kinda like having a song on repeat, except it's rhythmic beeps. The more you notice it, the harder it is to make it stop. Fun fact: being deaf mostly doesn't stop you from being able to hear tinnitus sounds. They can be very loud even to a deaf person. I'm not deaf, but I'm losing my hearing. I am on the border of needing hearing aids. I can't listen to music, it's just annoying noise. It's like a toddler whining and screaming. I get jingles like poop, plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Orbit heard what little I can hear from cartoons. Like Abby Hatcher Fuzzly Catcher, I heard Abby Hatcher Body Snatcher. Then my mind creates the rest of a messed up song, lol, or those 4 words would repeat. I'm not deaf, but I had a lot of deaf friends when I lived in Austin. Deaf people still listen to music, they just do it differently than you and I. All my deaf friends had amazing bass systems in their cars. Deaf person with cochlears here. It's basically the same as normal people, I assume, as I get good song lyrics stuck in my head all the time, but they also come along with built-in subtitles because it's easier to picture that way. My aunt has been deaf since she was 1, and whenever she listens to music she always puts on headphones and the volume on the highest and bops her head to the beat bass of the song, and I like watching her do her weird dance moves. We hear music differently. Music like opera, Gregorian chant, etc. all sound way better than anything else. Have difficulty with low frequencies and with bass usually. It's actually kind of a problem when I take my hearing aid off for bed, so my brain decides to create a filler noise. Lately, the Fairly OddParents theme song has been playing on a loop. I've been deaf since birth. I get movies stuck in my head, like if someone mentions a movie, for example, Coco. I then can't stop thinking about the movie and how I felt about it. I'm not sure if that's close to having a song stuck in my head. Having a rhythm stuck in your foot. Tapping your hands or knuckles on something at random times. I don't know how is that, I'm deaf since I was born. It's cool to discover there are a lot of deaf people on Reddit. Deaf 23M here and I still get songs stuck in my head. That's because I listen to music and yes I can hear music with the hearing aids I wear. Tip. Play the last verse in your head and the song should disappear. IDK about others, but I can feel vibrations, yes I am tough get jealous bitches, which is how I listen to music. I usually listen to New Orleans jazz or rock because I can feel the beat and vibrations the most. There are also heavy bass systems on my speakers in my car and on my Bluetooth so I can feel it better. It's nice. Just be nice when people have their bass up higher, you never know if they have perfect hearing. Read this the first time as dead people of Reddit and was really confused. A beat stuck in my feet. The bass rhythm I feel with a song. Smiley face. I am deaf but I wear a cochlear implant. And I continuously get songs stuck in my head. On loop. But weirdly, when I don't wear my cochlear implant, I hear sounds and songs do also stay in my head without it. I think my brain tries to imitate what it thinks the sound is like. For example, when I don't wear my cochlear implant, and say I drop my phone, my brain will imagine that sound without hearing it. Likewise if I see a music video, I don't know if there's a word for it. If anyone has any idea, let me know. Sensorineural loss. Cause unknown. Only the left ear ever worked. Never heard anything in stereo. Could use phone, TV, listen to the radio with the volume up and a hearing aid as a kid. Over time it all faded out. It was obvious the window was closing, so I memorized a fairly large jukebox of 70s tunes and a handful of early 80s work by favorite artists. Still get earworms. A tune might repeat for days, and sometimes reflects a feeling I'm not even fully aware of until I stop to ask, why this tune? Often it's obvious, but not always. Sometimes feelings come before awareness. Paying attention to what those feelings are expressing through music choices can be helpful. I had a completely deaf friend growing up. In the mid-80s he loved loud heavy rock music. He couldn't hear it, but could feel the beat, and loved it. He especially loved Metallica and AC/DC, and would play it as loud as the stereo would play. I know he got these songs stuck in his head, as we would be out somewhere and he would be tapping his feet to tunes from the albums. Actual deaf here. Any clear voice that I connected to a word, would be stuck playing in my head. Like Pink's, na 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 so what, in, So What, music video. Or actual deaf performers such as Rosalie Tim. She sing in ASL that have so much of rhythm movement, cannot help but keep seeing and hearing it in my head. Another that could stuck playing in my head is gifs of specific dance or movement. Thanks for watching. See you later.